بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا إلى يوم الدين ثم أما بعد. So this is the last, this is the last of the negative attributes. Once we finish this, you're done with the negative attributes and then we can move on inshallah ta'ala. It's the attribute of wahdaniyah, the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we need to know that God, after we know that He exists, we need to know that He is what? He has no beginning and He has no end. That's two. So He's not contained by time. We need to know that He's not contained by place, self-subsistent. We need to know that He is dissimilar. He's not similar, He's dissimilar to contingent beings, separation from Him. And then we need to know that He is one. There is no multiplicity of God. That attribute of wahdaniyah or oneness, what does it actually mean? It means the negation. When I say one, what does it mean, Ismail? It means not many. And when I say one as well, it means not made of parts. You are one in the sense that you are unique. There is no other Ismail who is identical to you. But you're not one in the sense that you are made of parts. You have a head, you have a hand, you have a heart. You're composed of things. So the meaning of oneness when it relates to Allah is negation of multiplicity in His entity. Which means that there is no more, we don't have multiplicity of entities of God. God does not have two entities. We don't have two gods. Each one has an entity. No, it's only one God. So negation of what? Multiplicity in His entity. And negation of multiplicity in His attribution. Which means that God does not need two powers to move things. He does not need two wills. You need two wills. We as human beings, we need what? Two levels of will. What do you mean by two levels of will? What do I mean by two levels of will? What do you think? What would that mean? When I say as human beings, we need two levels of will. Forget about inner and out. Even in society. As a child, you have a will. And as an adult, you have a will. Isn't it? As a child, you can go and say, you can buy any sweets you wish from the supermarket. But as a child, if a child says to his mother or father, I want to get married, will they get him married? He has a will to get married, but is he aware of that will? When can a person give their consent and that consent is legally valid? When? 16. Yes, when they are adults, isn't it? So that means human beings have different levels of will. So there are certain things you can do as a child, but you cannot do it as an adult. You know, in the Maliki school, it's very, very interesting. The Maliki school has some unique things. Imam Malik does not allow a child to lead salah. So if a child leads salat fard, specifically fard, if it's nafl, it's fine. If a child, even if that child is mumayyiz, like he has reached the age of discretion, like 7 or 8, and even if they know how to recite Quran, Why? Imam Malik says leading salah, fard salah, is a form of leadership and the person has to be qualified. How can he lead adults if he's a child? Right? So Imam Malik is very particular about that. So if I walk into MadIna Institute and I find that Sidi Bilal has liked one of the children here, he's a very smart boy, so he pushed him to lead Salatul Dhuhr. As a Maliki, I can't pray behind that child. My salah is invalid because according to my madhab, that jama'ah is what? Is invalid in the Maliki school. Well, it's not invalid in the Shafi'i school, it's not invalid in the Hanafi school, but it's invalid in the Maliki school. So I can't pray behind that person. Right? But if it's Taraweeh, okay. With a pinch of salt though. So that also they have like these conditions. So when we say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has will, His will is different from our will. His power is different from our power. Negation of multiplicity in His actions or need of immediacy. What does that mean? It means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does actions, His actions are not similar to anybody's actions. Because Allah's actions are not similar to anybody's actions, or human actions are not similar to Allah's. So when I turn to someone, I ask him for something that has the same name of the actions of Allah. For example, help. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's name is Al-Mu'in, the one who helps. But human beings can help us as well, isn't it? If I ask you, can you give me a helping hand, please? Can you help me with my fill in this form? So if I turn to someone and say, can you help me? No one can jump up and say, hey, you shouldn't seek help from humans. This is shirk. I say, no, that's not shirk. Why? Why is it shirk? Because you are asking humans for something that Allah only can do for you. No. You don't understand Aqidah, brother. You don't understand Aqidah. Aqidah teaches us that the actions of humans and the actions of Allah are two separate things. So even if I use a word that is similar, because remember that language is limited and ideas are not. Because language is limited, we might use the same word for so many things. Isn't it? We use that in Arabic. In Arabic, we have the word ayn. What does ayn mean? What does ayn mean? Eye. And what else? Letter ayn. What else? Spy. What else? Fountain. What else? Spring. What else? Property. You see, that's one word used for 5-6 things. How would I know which one? Depending on the context. So I always refer back to what? To the context. So if I turn to someone, if I turn to the Prophet ﷺ, Ya Rasulullah, help us with this problem. Right? And someone says, you're asking the Prophet to help you with this problem. This is shirk. You should ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'm asking the Prophet knowing that the Prophet is a abd, right? The Prophet is not God. He's a slave of Allah, isn't it? And I'm asking the Prophet knowing that he has limited ability. But I'm asking him because he can turn to Allah and ask him. Definitely he's closer to Allah than me. Like that man who said to a woman, a simple woman, uneducated, came to ask a Salafi Sheikh in the masjid. Asked him a fiqhi question, a legal, juristic question. So he said to her, do you want the answer from the Quran and the Sunnah, or do you want what Abu Hanifa says? Do you want what Abu Hanifa says, or do you want the Quran and the Sunnah? That's called false dichotomy, by the way. It's like a fallacy. The woman said, well, of course I want it from the Quran and the Sunnah, but I believe that Abu Hanifa understands the Quran and the Sunnah better than you. That's like a blow under the belt. Isn't it? That's very right. Of course I want it from the Quran and the Sunnah. Abu Hanifa is not going to give it to me from the Torah or the Gospel. He's also quoting the Quran and the Sunnah. And I believe that Abu Hanifa will understand the Quran and the Sunnah better than someone who is in a Mawlana in our local masjid. Right? So when someone says, how dare you use a word that is used for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? There are loads of words in Arabic that we use for humans and we use for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because language is limited. It's the context. Right? We call Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala an-nafi', the one who can bring benefit, isn't it? But can you call someone so and so yanfa'uni, so and so can benefit me? Yes. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya ibadi, innakum lan tablughu naf'i fatanfa'uni, in the hadith in Arba'in. O my servants, you cannot bring benefit to me that you think you can bring it. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala associated benefit with human beings. He's saying, well, you can bring benefit, but you cannot benefit me. Well, humans cannot benefit God. It's always God who benefits. So can humans bring benefit to you? Yes. The Prophet ﷺ, that's very, very interesting. If someone says, you cannot say so and so can benefit me. No one can benefit you except Allah. But the Prophet ﷺ said, مَا نَفَعَنِي مَالُ أَحَدٍ مَا نَفَعَنِي مَالُ عَائِشَةٍ. No one's money has benefited me more than the money of Khadija. Right, here you go. He's associating benefit and harm to what? To money. Right? So, oneness of entity, oneness of attributes, and oneness of actions. These are when we say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is one, we mean that He's one in His entity, one in His attributes, one in His actions. When we say He's one in attributes and actions, and entity, we are negating two types of shirk, or two types of multiplicity. One is called continuous quantity, and the other is called discrete quantity. Al-kam al-muttasil is the first one, and the second one is called al-kam al-munfasil. What do you mean by that? When we talk about oneness in entity, it means his entity is not composed of parts, members, or elements. Remember when we said that Allah is not universal or particular? Remember we said that before? When we say universal, we mean a name of a class that has got members underneath it. So when we say Allah, when I say, for example, Ismail, or when I say, what's your name again? Arsalan. When I say Arsalan, come here, Arsalan. Come. Yeah, come. Don't worry. When I say Arsalan, you see that this gentleman, when I say Arsalan, he is a person, right? He is one in the sense that he has got a body. But he's Arsalan as a name. What do you imagine when I say that? You imagine a human being that has got a face, hands, shoulders, legs, isn't it? Heart, intellect. What if I cut his hand and say Arsalan? Would you believe that this is an entity of a human being? No. So even though he is one, there is only one Arsalan, but he is called in logic, we call him Kul, whole. He's a whole. A whole is made of parts. Bismillah. I give you another example. When I say triangle, when I say what? Triangle. What is the triangle made of? 3 sides. What if I draw a shape, 2 sides, and leave the rest? Can I say, leave the third one? Can I say this is a triangle? What if I draw for you half a circle and I say circle? Would you believe that this is a circle? Why? Because a circle is composed of all of this. So when we say that God is one, it means his entity is not like created entities. Created entities, even though they might be unique, but they are made of elements. They are made of members. Water is made of molecules. Allah is not made of molecules. He's not made of atoms. He's not composed of parts. He's not composed of simple things coming together. He's not like that. Subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's called what? Continuous quantity. So when we say oneness in entity, it negates continuous quantity. And it also negates discrete quantity. What is discrete quantity? That there is no other entity necessarily qualified with perfection that is necessary to him. Meaning there is no other being who has the perfect attributes that we can call God. Because of what? Go back to that book, 5 Proofs for the Existence of God by Fraser. He will say, if we have 2 of the same kind, it means, even if they are identical, it means that we could not suffice with the first one, so there is deficiency associated with the first one, that we needed 2. Someone asks, why do we need 2 hands? Because 1 is not enough. Why do we need 2 eyes? Because 1 is not enough. What if the person has 1 eye only? He will be able to see one side of the road. His vision will not see. Remember that when human beings tried to create, or to manufacture, or to make, they made following the example of God. So the car has 2 lights in the front, isn't it? Has 2 lights in the front. The plane, same thing, on the sides and then in the tip. But the car has 2 sides. Why? In order to cover that 180 degrees. Because as a human being, as a human person, as a human, you can see 180 degrees, isn't it? Can you see behind you? You can't see behind you, but you have got ears. The ears can pick up the signal. Does the car have ears? Does the car have ears? I'm asking you. No, it doesn't. So we needed what? Backlights. We needed mirrors. We replaced the ears of the car with what? With visual aids. So that when we look at the mirror, oh, I can see behind me. And someone has to kind of press their horn to tell you they're coming from behind. You're able to observe. You look at the mirror to see. So when we say that oneness in entity negates or eliminates discrete quantity, it means there is no other entity that is necessarily qualified with perfection as is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Oneness of attributes, it means, again, negation of continuous what? Continuous quantity, which means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not have two powers. His power of eliminating a building is similar to his power in eliminating a molecule. He has power, there is no limits for his power. He doesn't need to upgrade his power. Imagine you have a phone, and your phone has a power to pick up certain signals, isn't it? But in certain countries or certain places, the signal is weak. So what do? You say, let me move to another place so that I can pick up the signal. Or let me put some something to strengthen the signal. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not need to strengthen his power, to upgrade his power, to upgrade his knowledge. Your knowledge, you say, you know what, I don't have enough knowledge of philosophy. Let me read a bit about philosophy. What you're doing, you're upgrading your knowledge. You are refining your abilities. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't need that. He says subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَيَعْلَمُ مَا فِي الْبَرِّ وَالْبَحْرِ. He knows that which is in the sea and that which is in the land. Equally. Before it exists, yes. In as much as after it exists. But you don't know before things exist. Now before I say something, you wouldn't know what I'm going to say. You only know subsequent to it. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows what you will say before you have said it, the way you would have said it. We'll talk extensively about that, because that relates to something called preordination and divine decree. Al-qada wal-qadar. Al-qada wal-qadar. Al-qada, preordination. Allah preordains things, meaning He has known what you would be doing on this specific day. So if He knows what I'm doing, then I don't have free will. No, you have free will. But your will is within the will of Allah. But how am I going to be punished or rewarded for something that I have no choice in? Well, do you have the knowledge of God? Do you know what you would have done before you do it? Do you know the consequences of it? Well, I don't. Okay, so you are actually, if you are in the dark about it, you are acting with full free will within your context, isn't it? If someone is watching you from outside and knows what you're going to do, if, let's say, for example, if there is a wall inside this room, and behind this wall there is an enemy who is going to attack you, and you are going to punch that enemy, you're strong enough to punch that enemy and kill him. Someone is seeing all of that, and he sees the enemy, and he knows that you will punch that enemy when he attacks you. He knows that because he's seeing it from outside. And then you did that because you're not aware. You know that someone must be seeing you, but you don't know what is behind the wall. Can you say, how come that he knew that there is an enemy and he prevented me from killing that enemy? Well, you didn't know what is behind the wall. You had free will. You could have, in that attack, you could have restrained yourself. So yes, we have free will, but we don't have free will. We'll talk about that next time. We have free will, but what? We don't have free will. We have free will and we don't have free will. How come? You get into the car and you turn on the car and the car moves. Did you move the car? Tell me. Did you move the car? Did you pull the car? Did you push the car? Did you? But are you responsible for an accident that the car makes? So we have free will, but we don't have free will. How do we understand divine preordination and divine decree if we understand the three attributes that we'll discuss next time? Knowledge, will, and power. In that order, knowledge, will, and power. Knowledge relates to will, and will relates to what? Power. Don't talk about power before you talk about will. And don't talk about will before you talk about what? Knowledge. The one who has knowledge is the one who wills, and the one who wills is the one who manifests. The link between will and power, between will and knowledge is called preordination. He has known everything, therefore he has preordained it. And the link between power or omnipotence and will is called what? Divine decree. He has willed, therefore he has decreed. But where am I in all of this? I make choices. When I walked in, Sidi Bilal said, would you like tea or coffee? I'll make it for you. Sah Sidi? I'll make it for you. I said to him, I want tea. If I have tea and then I thought, oh, the tea gave me high sugar in blood. Can I blame Sidi Bilal for making the tea for me? Whom should I blame? Myself. I made the choice. He gave me the power. But whose power was it to make the tea? His. You see that? So what we have a shadow of divine power. We have a shade of it, a slice. We're able to do things. We have a will, and Allah has will. His will nothing can stop it, but our will. There are things that can stop it. Someone wills to have £1 million, but he's not qualified to. He doesn't have means to. Right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala lets you act and function within your limitations, and He manifests what He has preordained for you, so that you feel that you're honorable, that you're not forced. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells you, if you believe, this is where you will end up. If you disbelieve, this is where you end up. And He knows if you will disbelieve or you believe. Well, He knows that this so-and-so will disbelieve, so how come that He's punishing them? He gave them the choice. But He knew. Well, did you know what He knew? No, you didn't. So why did He give me the choice in the first place? Because you're honorable. He wants to make you feel that what you got is out of your hard work. Then you appreciate it more. Ismail has a nephew. So he wants to encourage his nephew to do good deeds. So he gives him £5 and he says, there is one man sitting next to the masjid, poor person, homeless. Give him that £5. Allah will be very pleased with you. And then he takes the £5, which he took from Ismail, to give it to the charity, to the man whom Ismail has told him about, and to execute the action Ismail has told him about, to achieve the reward Ismail told him about. He comes back and he says to Ismail, hey, you didn't help me in any way. Why? I did it myself. Well, but I gave you the money. I told you about it. I told you about the guy. But I walked to it. Yes, I let you walk and do it yourself so that you feel the value of doing good deeds. Right? But in reality, you didn't do anything. Because all the facilitation is whose? Mine. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala prepares Jannah, tells you how to achieve it, helps you achieve it, guide you to achieve it, gives you the iman with which you achieve it, and then you go to Jannah and you take that spot and say, that's my spot, no one is entitled to it, I got it with my own hard work. Excuse me, well, did you pay for it? Yes, I spent all my life doing good deeds, but who told you to do good deeds? Who facilitated the good deeds for you? Who gave you the energy with which you did the good deeds? Right? So we'll talk about that. So the oneness, that none in this universe possesses also the attributes of God. Oneness of actions. Oneness of actions means that no one possesses the actions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But are actions of Allah, is there multiplicity of the actions of Allah? Yes, there is multiplicity of the actions of Allah. He debases people, He elevates people, He brings someone to death, He brings someone to life, He does loads of things. So the actions of Allah, unlike His attributes and unlike His entity, they have parts, they have different members. Attributes are the same. One qudra, one power, one will. But actions, no, His actions vary according to the situation, because actions are to do with the recipient. But no one can possess the actions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is just a summary, and we, inshallah, 2 more minutes. So the first 6 attributes, who can remind me of them? What's the first one? I'll take 2 sisters and 4 brothers. Who wants to volunteer? What's the first attribute? Self-signifying. So what is the attribute underneath that? Existence, mashallah. One more sister? Without checking your notes? What's the first attribute of negation? Let's go to the brothers and then we come back to you. Yes, the one who keeps talking to Arsalan. No, we haven't even come to omnipotence yet. From the first 6 attributes we've studied so far. Huh? Pre-eternality, yes. Go back to the sisters. So we mentioned existence, pre-eternality. Uh-huh. Huh? What's that? Endlessness, mashallah. Speak powerfully. Huh? Don't be afraid. Endlessness. Ismail, you mentioned before. Huh? Arsalan. Dissimilarity. Huh? Mubarak. Yes, that's eternality, like endlessness. Alex? We haven't studied it yet. I said the first 6 attributes. The one next to you? Yes, what is under negation? The 6 attributes under negation. The brother next to you? Oneness. Okay. What else? Self-subsistence. What else? One more. Yeah, pre-eternality, al-qidam. There is one more. This similarity to beings, isn't it? That he is not resemblant to any created being, isn't it? So these are the Arabic names for them. Al-wujud, existence. Al-qidam, beginninglessness. Sometimes they call it dhati, al-qidam al-dhati, which means it is necessarily his attribute. No one gave it to him. It's his. Dhati comes from him, right? And then al-what? Al-baqa, endlessness. And then al-mukhalafah lil-hawadith. Mukhalafa means disagreement, dissimilarity. Hawadith, plural of hadith. Hadith means created. And then al-qiyam bin nafs, self-subsistence. And finally what? Al-wahdaniyah. And down there, this bit, these are 2 lines from Ibn Ashir. Ibn Ashir is a text in Maliki fiqh, but the first 1/3 of it is actually not 1/3. It's 50 lines, 47 lines of it are on aqidah. So it's like some texts on fiqh. Part of it is aqidah, part of it is tasawwuf, part of it is fiqh. So the beginning is what? Is aqidah. And because Ibn Ashir is from Morocco, Abdul Wahid ibn Ashir, rahmatullah alayh, so he sums up his aqidah is a poetic renderance of a Sanusiya. So if what we're studying in a Sanusiya, if you memorize the aqidah of Ibn Ashir, you'll have a Sanusiya in poetry. So he says, rahimahullah ta'ala, after some lines, he says, يَجِبُ لِلَّهِ الْوُجُودُ وَالْقِدَمُ كَذَا الْبَقَاءُ وَالْغِنَى الْمُطْلَقُ عَامٌ وخلفه لخلقه بلا مثال ووحدة الذات ووصف والفعال. And then he says وقدرة إرادة علم حياة سمع كلام بصر ذا واجبات ويستحيل ضد هذه الصفات عدم الحدوث ذا للحادثات. So يجب لله, necessary to God is what? رحمكم الله. الوجود والقدم, وجود قدم. كذا البقاء, also البقاء. والغنى المطلق, الغنى المطلق means absolute needlessness, that he does not need, which is what? Self-subsistence. وَالْغِنَى الْمُطْلَقُ عَمْ وَخُلْفُهُ لِخَلْقِهِ, disagreement with creation, that he is dissimilar to them. وَخُلْفُهُ لِخَلْقِهِ بِلَا مِثَالٍ, without an example. He does not have anyone similar to him. وَوَحْدَةُ الذَّاتِ, unity of what? Of that, of entity. وَوَصْفٍ, attributes. وَالْفِعَالِ, and actions. There's a very nice, very, very beautiful recitation of Ibn Ashir online. You can find it and you can download it if you wish. You can listen to it. Let me show you. How is it? It is like that. ومن طوت عليه من العقائد الحمد لله الذي علمنا من العلوم ما به كلفنا صلى وسلم حدوث ذا للحادثات كوصف وفعل وقدرة. Here you go. يجب لله الوجود والقدم كذا البقاء والغنى المطلق عم وخلفه So nice, isn't it? So nice to memorize. I used to play it to my girls and they memorize the first 5 lines. يقول عبد الوحيد بن عاشر مبتدئا بسم الإله القادر الحمد لله الذي علمنا من العلوم ما به كلفنا. Like that. صلى وسلم على محمد وآله وصحبه والمقتدي وبعد فالعون من الله المجيد في نظم أبيات للأمي تفيد في عقد الأشعار وفقه مالك وفي طريقة الجنيد السالك. It's beautiful line, very, very beautiful poetry. Rahmatullah ala Ibn Ashir. Especially in Babul Hajj, if you ever interested in Maliki fiqh, Ibn Ashir rahimahullah wrote his poem, the last part on Hajj, when he was in Hajj. So subhanAllah, it has special feelings. Every time I go to Hajj or Umrah, I recite it from MadIna to Mecca because he describes Hajj exactly. وإن تريد ترتيب حجك اسمع بيانه والذهن منك استجمعا إن جئت رابغا تنظف واغتسل كواجب وبالشروع يتصل والبس ردا وأزرة عليني واستصحب الهدي وركعتين بالكافرون ثم لإخلاصهما فإن مشيت أو ركبت أحرما بنية تصحب قولا وعمل كمشينا وتلبية مما اتصل. Amazing, subhanallah. Even when you are in tawaf, he says للبيت من باب السلام. It's like he goes to the house of Allah. للبيت من باب السلام فاستلم. Then touch الحجر الأسود سبعا وأتم 7 أشواط به وقد يسر مستقبلا مقبلا ذاك الحجر ماتت هذه كذا اليماني لكن ذا باليد خذ بياني إن لم تصل للحجر المس باليد وضع على الفم وقبل تقتدي. It's amazing, subhanallah, the feeling of it. So this is something that you can memorize these attributes from. يجب لله الوجود والقدم كذا البقاء والغنى المطلق عم وخلفه لخلقه بلا مثال ووحدة الذات ووصف والفعال. So where is the first attribute? الوجود. Second one القدم. Third one البقاء. Fourth one الغنى المطلق, absolute needlessness that he doesn't need. Fifth one خلفه لخلقه, that he's different from being. Sixth, ووحدة الذات ووصف والفعال, oneness in entity, in action, in attributes and in actions. والله تعالى أعلى وأعلم وأعز وأكرم. Alhamdulillah, I'm satisfied now. I wouldn't have been satisfied, Sidi Bilal, if we finish Aqidah earlier. 5,000. 95% of the world population speak 12 languages. No, speak 100 languages. Yes, speak 100 languages. So what about the rest of the world? The rest of the world, 5%, they speak the rest of the 5,000 languages. Many of them are extinct. And then even these 100 languages that we speak massively in the world, there is 100 words that manipulate our day-to-day conversations. These words have something unique about them. What is it? That they are plastic, meaning they're very malleable. You can fit them anywhere and they mean anything and everything. So basically, when someone says something to you, you should take it with a lot of salt, not a pinch of salt, a lot of salt. Because you say, what do you mean by that? Possibly someone is misleading you. And then he actually makes a list of 50 of these words. And he shows you how these words can be put in any context and they would fit. For example, the word system, the word administration, the word information. And he says what makes these words dangerous is they have been moved, migrated. We have something called vernacular language. That's the human communication language. And there is something called scientific language. Scientific language is rigid. Science language is rigid. It is not flexible like human language. So when you use words in science, you have to be precise because the word cannot mean two things at a time. It means one thing only. By the same token, human language that has been created for communication is flexible because it has human nature. If you decide to take words that are in human language and send them to science and associate them with scientific meanings and send them back to human language, you give them a completely different sense. You make them rigid where they are not supposed to be rigid, right? So what happens? Human language becomes very rigid, very manipulative, very problematic. So one of these words is information, for example. Inform means to train someone to do something else. So for example, can you inform me how to fix a car? Means, can you train me how to right? But between 1960 and 1970, that's the time of the information technology and all of that, the word information moved from vernacular into what we call scientific language and given a new meaning, the meaning data. And then it was sent back to human language. Nowadays, it moved from being a process, training, to an object. It's called objectifying it. So after it's been objected, but become an object, it became very manipulative. I have information, you don't have any information. Freedom of information, information bank, information technology, information this. That's very dangerous. Take, for example, the word sexuality. The word sexuality is used nowadays as if it is separate from the person. While if we look, this person needs to identify his sexuality. He needs to know his sexuality. Isn't that what's in the media? While in history, the word sexuality meant nothing except sex drive. That's it. It had nothing to do with identity. But in the last 50 years or 30 years, the word sexuality was moved from its original meaning to become something to do with identity. This person needs to find his sexuality, i.e. his identity. Well, that's not the meaning, right? That's the meaning of... So what happens is there is manipulation of language. There is manipulation of ethics, there is manipulation of values. Now the last one is the manipulation of language. What's the danger if language become manipulated like that? Human beings will not have anything to communicate with each other. It's called fragmentation of society. So our society is being fragmented after, in the modern age, from what we call bigger families to nucleus families. Back in the days, if you come from the Middle East or you come from Pakistan or here in England, cousins and aunties and uncles and brothers used to live in one house, isn't it? So what used to happen, the mother didn't have to worry too much about the child upbringing. Why? There is so many aunties around to take care of the children. So even if the mother is busy, there are so many mothers in the house, isn't it? But nowadays with nucleus family, the resources are less. Back in the days, let's say, there are 6 brothers living in one house. one of them is not working anymore, would food be a problem? No. There is always food in the house, isn't it? There is always food. If he wants to work, he needs to work for something else. But nowadays, can your father take it not to work? Definitely not. If someone is laid off from their job, they have to feed the family. But back in the days, if they lose their job, no problem. I can take my time and find a job. Nowadays, I have to find a job regardless. Why? I have to feed my family. Same thing. The mother has to go and work. So what happens? The child, there is no one to take care of the child. So they started sending the children to kindergarten or to nursery from a young age. So the society had a say on what the children should believe and how should they behave. The parents realized that there is a reduction of their authority in what their own children. So that's my children. The society says, no, it's not your children anymore. I own him as well. I own your child 9 to 3. I own him half the day, you own him half the day, isn't it? So the society started playing the role of mother and father. Because naturally, in any traditional society, the society cannot be the mother and the father. So what happened? We started seeing a decline in children behavior, street crime, all sorts of misbehaviors. The government wanted to stop that, so they started treating the outcome of it, treating street crime. But what's the main cause? It's the demolishing of the role of the family in the life of the child. Treat the family problem rather than the outcome. It's like someone has fever. And instead of taking medicine for the fever, he just treats the outcome of it. Right? So this is now, the society has broken the tradition, has broken the family. These are the pillars of the society. The last pillar of the society is language. Once you break language, there is no communication between human beings. Everyone will live in his own cocoon. So I talk to you, I talk to Arsalan. Arsalan, he says this. He says, no, he doesn't want to be called he. What does he want to be called? She. Oh, okay, she wants to, no, she doesn't want to be called she today. She wants to be called it. Well, okay, it, no, she doesn't want to be called it today. She wants to be called she. So, astaghfirullah. So like, how many pronouns can I use? So what happens? You break language. Language becomes subjective. Subjectivity is quite problematic. Subjectivity moved from subjectivity when it comes to reality to subjectivity of ethics, subjectivity of language. So subjectivity of ethics means that what is right only according to you, but it's not right according to me. It's right today, but it's not right tomorrow. So that book is very small, but it's a very liberating book. Very, very liberating. Some books on history as well, on the history of colonial Britain in the Muslim world, are not available. Are not available. If you buy them, and the title is there, but it's out of stock. Or it is like £11,000, like that book. That book was for £11,000. The cheapest I found is like 700, and then I found a copy for 160. I had to convince my wife to allow me to buy it. I bought it in the end. So after I bought that copy, I scanned it, and anyone wants it, I email it to them. There you go liberate yourselves. Seriously, it's a very, very good book, very, very good. Small read, but it's very sharp. Yes, I'll email it to Sidi Bilal, and if he doesn't mind sharing it with you, inshallah. Bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. Yeah. And then subhanAllah, this brother Tariq saw it. He said, Sheikh, I found plastic words. I said, Khalas, here is my card, go and buy it. He bought 5 copies. They refunded all of them. They said, no, this book is not available. And as soon as we ordered it, it's like disappeared. Now you can still find it on Amazon. If you're lucky, you will find it on Amazon. But again, let me see, just Amazon. Plastic words. Yeah, it is £260, 4 used. Yeah, that's it. Nothing else. I bet even if you order it, you will get refused. Yeah. Plastic words, tyranny of modular language. Oh yes, used from. If you click it, used from £1,041. Do you see it? Do you see it? Used outside it says used from £260. Once you click it, it's 1041 from RBM Books, 1204, like insuring your car for a whole year. £1,500, free delivery. MashaAllah, that's really good. Free delivery. There is another book, CD. There is another book called The Records of Yemen. The Records of Yemen, 16 volumes, by a man called Harold Ingrams. Harold Ingrams was the British High Commissioner to Yemen in Hadramaut. And this man, they used to call him the Sultan of Yemen. He was more influential than many of the leaders of Yemen. He is the British High Commissioner in Yemen. So he wrote 16 volumes on the history of Yemen, and this man knows Yemen better than the Yemenis themselves. That book was available for £16,000. I couldn't find it in Birmingham University. This book, Plastic Words, it's not in the British Library, believe it or not. That's why I was very alerted. I took it to my University of Birmingham library and I said, can I get this book? Can I borrow this book? They said, okay, let's get it for you from the British Library. It's not in the British Library. It's not in any library in England. So I asked about the Records of Yemen, and they said we don't have it either. They have it in the British Library though. So I found a copy online, and I just, out of curiosity, I sent an inquiry about it. So it went to an antique collector in America. The guy contacted me privately. I have the email. Why are you interested in this book? Very strange. That the Records of Yemen. I said, I am a PhD researcher and I'm working on Yemen and I need it for my... no, we don't give this book except to big libraries that have patrons and... What do you mean by that? Very strange. So I recently printed a book on Harold Ingrams. There was a PhD about his life. Possibly I can share the PDF, but it's in Arabic, unfortunately, about Harold Ingrams. It's magnificent. It shows how dangerous that man was. Yeah, there are certain books that if you read, you will start seeing what we're actually going through has been planned for a long time. It's no conspiracy theory, by the way. Don't take me wrong. It's no conspiracy theory, but it is people write history in a different way. There is one man called Marshall Hodgson. I strongly advise that you read his book on history, The Venture of Islam. He died at the age of 46. He was a professor of history at Chicago University. His 3 volumes, the Venture of Islam, is liberating. Another book is Edward Said's Orientalism, which I'm reading at the moment. If you have heard of Edward Said, Orientalism, it just tells you there is a whole discipline in Western universities called Orientalism. Basically, Orientalism comes from the word Orient. The Orient means the East. You cannot make such a generic word to describe such a variety of people from Middle East to Asia to Far East and say study of the Orient. What do you mean by study of the Orient? Okay, study of Yemeni studies, Islamic studies. Have you heard of Occidental studies? Occident and Orient are the opposite. So he basically says that this Orientalism is a form of power. It's power practiced by the West on the East. Imperialist powers were practicing their power on the East. And the problem is the East had no say on describing itself. Who was describing the East? Who was describing the Orient? West. So someone takes you, studies you, analyzes you, and plasters your mouth. You are not allowed to say a word. And I start describing you and printing and painting my own images. So this exotic East that comes with flying carpets, Aladdin, Sinbad, Hollywood media, all of that is a product of what? Of knowledge in service of power. If people can actually look at or study and see history in this perspective, they will understand. They will be smart. Muslims will not be succumbing to some stupidity. People, when the elections come, everyone's like, labor, 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 labor. I said, calm down, have some thinking. No, labor is going to bring our rights back to us. Okay, good luck to you. Khair. Let's go to tafsir. Are you going to read? Or Arsalan is going to read? So where did we stop, Arsalan? I think we stopped in page 31. Isn't it? Yeah. It is generally recognized. Go on.
It's generally recognized that there is a level of guidance exclusive to God, since it involves creating and bringing into existence, both of which are exclusively divine prerogatives, and another that is carried out by created beings, which is exposition, providing proof and clarification. However, few are those who have taken notice of the fact that guidance by exposition is itself divided into general and particular, even though the Quran explicitly declares this, for we see God attributing both general and particular guidance to the Quran in a single verse, meaning, and we sent down the book upon you as a clarification of everything, as well as a guidance, a mercy and good news for the Muslims. See how he first makes it a clarification of everything.
So basically what he's saying here is he talks about the different levels of hidayah, isn't it? The different levels of guidance. So he says that the first level of guidance is demonstration. The first level of guidance is to guide created beings towards Allah and motivate them to believe and obey Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? And then the second level is that of demonstration. And that level of demonstration, basically to demonstrate, to introduce, has two categories. One is general guidance and the other is what? Particular guidance. So the Quran in its general sense relates to all human beings. That means a non-Muslim can still be guided by the Quran while still being a non-Muslim. How? Because the Quran contains ethical instructions, it contains guidance related to marital life, societies, cleanliness and all of that. And people who do not even believe in the Quran as a sacred book, they can still take it as a book of good character. So that's what we call what? Al-Hidayah al-Amma. It is the first is general guidance whereby God addresses all people indiscriminately. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, Ya ayyuhan nas, inna khalaqnakum min dhakarin wa untha, وَجَعَلْنَاكُمْ شُعُوبًا وَقَبَائِلَ لِتَعَارَفُوا. O people, we created you from a male and female and made you into nations and tribes so that you know each other. Is he talking about Muslims? Is this ayah addressing Muslims? We made you into nations and tribes so that you know each other, or Muslims only. As for non-Muslims, they should not know each other. No, that's Hidayah Amma. That's a general guidance. Everyone, human beings, the norm between all human beings should be that they should get to know one another. This is what the revelation can help. You ask me, so what is the point of knowing this, ya Shaykh? There is a great importance for knowing this, because we ask about what role can Islam play in modern life, isn't it? What can Muslims offer to humanity beyond da'wah, beyond specific da'wah? They can offer a lot. The world today, is everything okay? The world today talks about stereotyping. There is continuous stereotyping. The media works hard on stereotyping people, stereotyping areas, stereotyping religion. And what the Quran is offering as a medication for your stereotyping is what? Get to know one another. Travel and get to know one another. Don't receive your information through television, through the internet. Why? Because that's not knowledge. How do we know? Get to know one another. When people talk today about al-awlama, globalization. What is globalization? What's the practical implication of globalization? And what's the ideal of globalization? The ideal of globalization is, since we live in a in a globalized village, we should take and give to each other, isn't it? Isn't it? We should benefit from each other's experience. But the reality of globalization is some countries or one country have a specific way of thinking about politics, and they want everyone to force it upon everyone. So democracy is the best. Everyone has to be democratic. But what if democracy works here but it doesn't work there? What if your daughter, this daughter of yours, loves dresses and she looks good in dresses, but her sister looks good in trousers? Will you force her to wear dress because her sister has to wear dress? Since you are a girl, you have to. What might be beneficial for one might not be beneficial for somebody else. We live in Europe, for example, and in Europe there was certain historical context that has led to the modernity. There was manipulation by the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church persecuted scientists. Galileo Galilei was persecuted when he said that the earth is what? That the earth is oval, and when he created the telescope and all of these things. But because of this persecution by the church, scientists turned against what? Religion. So they hated religion. And religion was authoritative. It always sided with power. It always sided with emperors. It always sided with monarchs. So they decided the only way to weaken the authority of religion and its manipulation on the society is by separating the church from the state. So they brought something called what? Secularism. The implication of that is secularization. So let's secularize. What is the first thing you should secularize? Government. Government should be a secular power. It does not have a say in religious issues. Okay, fine. Schools as well were manipulated by the church. To this day, there is C of E schools, Church of England schools, right? So let's reduce or remove the power of what? Of church from schools. So they introduced something called public schools. You know, public school, it doesn't stand against private schools. No, it stands against church schools. So secularizing education. Okay. Then they started secularizing values. Secularizing what? Values and morals. Why do religionists say that you need to be a righteous Christian to be a good person? A person who doesn't believe in God at all can be successful in material life and can be a good person as well. Have you heard of David Bentham? No one has heard of David Bentham? That's very pity. David Bentham is Bentham. Yeah, David Bentham, B. His mummified body, I think it's either not in the British Museum. I think it's in UCL Lifetime. Yes, this man is the inventor of something called utilitarianism. He has a school called utilitarianism. What's utilitarianism? That which is good is what brings you benefit. So if lying is good, if lying brings you benefit, it's good. If cheating brings you benefit, it's good. If a woman can find satisfaction if she sleeps with a man other than her husband, no problem, she can cheat on her husband. This is utilitarianism. That utilitarianism is part of something called humanism. What is humanism? That morality is nothing to do with religion or revelation. It's to do with what? With humans. So this demolition of the power of religion, bit by bit, happened in the West. So the Western society that we live in have an issue with religion because of its past, understandable. But Muslims in the Muslim world never had that problem. Isn't it? It is like someone who had a failing marriage and then he sees his friend who has a very successful family. So he says to him, don't ever trust a woman. My ex-wife did this to me. Well, your ex-wife is not my wife. Your marriage is not my marriage. You should not punish me for your failure in your life. So what happens is, because of that context, the West has come to that reality. Now it is going everywhere and pushing towards everyone has to have that reality, disconsidering or disregarding the background of every country. Right? The background of every country. That Middle Eastern countries, or Eastern countries, or Muslim countries, or even South America did not have the same problem they had here. That's why South America, to this level, it's massively a Catholic continent, isn't it? It didn't have the same problem that Europe had. Why? They didn't have an industrial revolution. They had it here. They didn't have a French Revolution. They had it here. They didn't have Jean-Jacques Rousseau. They didn't have Francis Bacon or Roger Bacon. These are the leaders of materialism, empiricism. All the changes that happen in this small continent called Europe did not happen elsewhere in the world. That's why America, to this day, is more religious supposedly than Europe, even though it's very secular at the same time. It embraced a different type of secularism, right? So what can we offer as Muslims? What can Islam offer? What can the Quran in that level of hidayah, amma, of general guidance offer? It can offer to people that, listen, globalization, as in the Islamic perspective, means let's get to know each other. When we get to know each other, we will not enslave each other. We will not cross the Atlantic, capture and abduct people of different skin, ship them on ships across the Atlantic and enslave them. When we get to know each other, we will not stereotype Indians as cunning and snake charmers. And we will not portray Arabs as rich and mean. And we will not portray Moroccans as this, and we will not portray any person as other than the white man. That's, we get to know each other. Everyone has potential. Everyone has something to give. We will create a world civilization together. Rather than, Ismail, I don't want you to wear this. You should wear my shirt. Oh, but your shirt is too tight for me. You have to wear it. It's good for me. Yes, it's good for you, but it's not good for me. But you have to wear it. I tried it. It's very enjoyable. You will enjoy it. But I feel tight. Doesn't really matter. Wait. You are not enjoying it because you don't want to enjoy it. You're bad. So this is democracy. But democracy doesn't work here. Well, you guys are not fit for democracy because you're primitive, you're barbaric. Democracy is for civilized man. That's problematic. Intellectually, that's problematic because it assumes the supremacy of one group of human beings above another group of human beings. And if I assume that Ismail doesn't know anything, and I have to tell him everything from A to Z, therefore, he will not discover his potentials and I will never discover his potentials. So after I die, there will be no one to lead the earth. Isn't it? So that's a problem. What can we offer? Through the Al-Hidayah Al-Amma is to tell people, look, we have another theory other than the theory of the clash of civilizations. Have you heard of the clash of civilizations? Please don't tell me you didn't hear about it. Who has heard of the clash of civilizations? Yes. Yes, who? MashaAllah. Alhamdulillah, I'm hopeful now. So who wrote on the clash of civilizations? Who came up with that concept? He's American. Samuel Huntington. Yeah, Samuel Huntington. So Samuel Huntington said that there are 6 civilizations in the world. And he basically kind of drew them, I don't know on what basis, on religion and on race. And he said they will clash with each other and that's the end of history. So big superpowers of the world are pushing towards the end of history, a third world war. But Islam doesn't say that. The Quran, its general guidance says there is no clash of civilization. There is integration of civilization. Isn't it? Your ancestors embraced Islam in India and in Pakistan, in what was known India at the time. Did they have to change their Indian identity? Did they have? Was there something called European values, you have to fit in the European values, otherwise you will not be integrating? Was there at any point in time you have to be integrated into the Muslim society? No. They maintained what they had back in the days, and they, using their creativity, they adapted Islam to their own culture. That's why you didn't need any literature written in Arabic to learn your Islam. You had Urdu literature. Yeah. Enough. Is there enough Urdu literature about Islam? There is. Malay literature about Islam? There is. Same should be in here in Europe, right? So Al-Hidayah Al-Amma addresses all people regardless of their faith. The second type of Al-Hidayah Al-Amma, the Hidayah of demonstration, is what we call Al-Hidayah Al-Khassa. That is for a person who believes in the Quran as a sacred book. Then he finds when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, for example, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, ati'u Allah wa rasulahu. O you who believe, obey Allah and His Messenger. That's Hidayah Khassa. That speaks to the believers. If you believe in Allah and His Messenger, obey them. So what am I going to get if I obey Allah and His Messenger? You will rest from having to use your mind without need. You exhaust yourself. What am I supposed to do in this situation? What am I supposed to do? Allah says to you, obey Allah and His Messenger. Even if it means disobeying yourself. Even if it means you're going against your own desire. You're going against your own hawa. Continue.
Clarification of everything which here means everything that human beings in general need and is therefore not exclusive to believers, and then goes on to affirm that it is a guidance, a mercy and good news for the Muslims exclusively.
Yes, so this ayah supports what we talked about, the two levels of hidayah. That one is am, one is general, the other is what? Particular. So this ayah says, we sent down the book, the Quran, upon you as a clarification of everything as well as guidance, mercy, good news for the Muslims. So mercy and good news for the Muslims and guidance, but as a clarification for everything. Why didn't Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say, as a clarification as well as guidance, as well as mercy, as well as good news for Muslims? This is like Tibyanan li kulli shay, as a clarification for everything, for everyone, to everyone. And as hudan wa rahmatan wa bushra lil muslimin. So it is guidance, it is mercy, it is glad tidings for those who accept it. But it's explanation and exposition for everyone.
Imam Ibn Juzay remarked on this in his At-Tasheel li Ulum al-Tanzil, facilitating the sciences of revelation, defining guidance in this verse as meaning direction, and is confined to the God-fearing. Had it meant exposition, it would have involved everyone in general, as his saying, meaning guidance for mankind. This is a clear indication that some guidance is general and thus meant for all people.
Yeah.
Many examples of particular guidance can be found in the verses which begin with the meaning all believers. There are a little more than 80 of these.
Yes.
The address is to believers so that the content is exclusively theirs. As for general guidance, it includes all the verses which begin, O humans, O children of Adam. These, where the call is addressed to the entire human race, are a little over 20.
You see that? This is very interesting. So we basically have ayat in the Quran where Allah addresses, O you who, O people, O sons of Adam, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, Ya ayyuhannas, Ya bani Adam. If you count them throughout the Quran, there is about 100 of them. There is about 100 of them. 80 of them, basically 80%, are O you who believe. Addresses the believers. Why? Because the Quran was revealed to the Ummah, to the Ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. While the 20% address who? General people, general masses. Ya ayyuhan nas, O people. Ya bani Adam, O sons of Adam. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya bani Adam khudhu zinatakum inda kulli masjid, O sons of Adam, put on your beauty, meaning adore yourselves at every place of worship, at every place of prayer. Is that only to Muslims? No, to non-Muslims as well. So if a non-Muslim is coming to his church or coming to their place of worship, they should dress neatly. Even if a non-Muslim is coming to visit the mosque, because it's a sacred. Basically, this ayah talks to Muslims. When you come to prayer, you should be clean and pristine, and you should come to the masjid in a good shape. And it talks at a different level, at another level, to people in general, that when you come to sacred places, you should conduct yourselves in such a way that you look nice and clean. Why? Because of the fact that it's a sacred place. If you're attending court hearing, will you walk into the court with your workshop clothing? Huh? You are a butcher, mashallah, jazakumullah khair. You are a butcher, for example, and you are in the farm. You're working in the farm and you're sweating and dusty and everything, and then you've been called to have an interview. Will you walk to that interview as you are? No, will you? What will you do, Ismail?
Go home, get ready.
Okay, take a shower, right? Take a shower. You won't walk into the masjid and everyone can smell curry from your clothes. Like pretty much people look at your clothes and they can tell what did you have for lunch. Isn't it? Not you, no, specifically you. You won't walk into Taraweeh prayer and everyone can know what did you have for iftar today. Like just from the smell of your mouth or from the burping. The Imam is reciting Quran and he only can hear, instead of Ameen, all the burping coming from behind. Like, why? Because the Muslims realize the value of the place that they are going to, the masjid. Seriously, we claim that we are people of cleanliness. Look at our bathrooms. Look at our toilets in the masjid. They are in a very miserable shape. Isn't it? In a very miserable shape. So that's the level of hidayah. There is one talking to. So if we look at the percentage, 80 to 20. Because the Quran's default addressees are Muslims.
This is why verses starting with all believers usually carry the legal injunctions, whereas those that begin with all humans or all children of Adam usually carry reminders of principles that are general and concern all humans.
Yeah.
Examples of these are the story of how creation began, pointing out and detailing divine blessings and signs, the need to guard oneself against the devil and his malicious endeavor to turn people away from the signs of God, repeated invitations for them to follow what their messengers had brought them, their instillation of respect for religion in general, encouraging different communities to get to know each other, and other such common concerns of the human race.
You see, this is very, very important. I would like you, today after you go home, you take up your Qur'ans and pick up a few ayat that start with Ya Bani Adam and some ayat that start with Ya Ayyuhal Ladhina Amanu. And just read through the ayah and see how does it, when Allah says, O you who believe, the content of the ayah is something to do with rulings. Ya Ayyuhal Ladhina Amanu Kutiba alaykum as-siyam. O you who believe, fasting is an obligation upon you. Ya Ayyuhal Ladhina Amanu أطيعوا الله ورسوله, obey Allah and His Messenger. يا أيها الذين آمنوا كلوا من طيبات ما أحل الله لكم, eat from that pure sustenance which Allah has allowed for you. كلوا من طيبات ما رزقناكم, eat from that pure which we have provided for you. But when He says يا أيها الناس يا أيها الناس اعبدوا ربكم, worship your Lord. You know. يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم, fear your Lord. Generic. إن زلزلة الساعة شيء عظيم. The earthquake of the last day is something magnificent. Well, when the last day comes upon us, it will not come only upon Muslims and leave non-Muslims. يا أيها الناس ضرب مثل فاستمعوا له. O people, here is a parable for you. Listen to it. إن الذين تدعون من دون الله لن يخلقوا ذبابا. Those whom you call beyond Allah, whether it's your intellect, those whom you venerate beyond Allah, whether it's your intellect, your technology, your idols. Back in the days it was idols, nowadays it's technology. Your science, if you believe that science is God, can science create a fly? The Quran says, لَنْ يَخْلُقُوا ذُبَابًا. They cannot create a fly. وَلَوْ اجْتَمَعُوا لَهُ. Even if they put all their efforts together. So someone might say, oh, this is to the disbelievers of Jahiliyyah. Not today. Because nowadays, people believe in science. Right? If they believe in science, can science create? Can scientists get together? Even the most well-versed scientists, they say that creating a cell is extremely difficult. And they take it from another cell. No one can create a cell from scratch. Like even when they say, we manipulate DNA. But where did you get the DNA from? They got it from another cell. What did they do? They just played around with it. It's like a child who's got some Legos from his brother, and then he put them around and he said, look, I made a house. Well, you didn't make a house, you just like put the Legos together. Right? So look at that. The content of this ayah is a general address, is a universal case for anyone. Ya ayyuhan nas, Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu dhkuru ni'matallahi alaykum. That's like to do with the life of the Muslim community. Ya bani Adam, la yaftinannakum ash-shaytan. O sons of Adam, don't let shaitan mislead you. Does shaitan mislead the Muslim community only? Misleads everyone. Don't let shaitan mislead you. How would shaitan mislead non-Muslims, you think? Beyond making them neglect the fact that Allah is their creator. How would shaitan mislead non-Muslims? You tell me.
Make them greedy?
Yeah. Make them kill each other. Shaitan has interest in the destruction of the human race. One of my teachers says that kufr, disbelief, is the aqidah, is the belief of shaitan. Because the first disbeliever in the world was who? Iblis. He's the first one who refused to obey Allah and prostrate to Adam. And from that day, he doesn't want to be alone because he knows he will be punished. So he wants to gather a group with him so that when he is burning in hellfire, it makes him at peace a bit to see that he's not there alone. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّمَا يَدْعُو حِزْبَهُ. He calls his party. Hizb is Arabic, is party. إِنَّمَا يَدْعُو حِزْبَهُ. He calls his party. لِيَكُونُوا مِنْ أَصْحَابِ السَّعِيرِ. So that they all go together to hellfire. Right, continue, Sid.
The whole objective or general guidance is to promote particular guidance by serving a preliminary for it. Its goal is to invite all people to a divinely inspired system of values, divine laws, and principles of good functioning for human society.
Yes, so someone might ask, so what is the point of this general hidayah? What does it do? It aims at creating what we call global peace. You know, people who talk about global peace. It aims at what? Creating what? Global peace. Making sure that the world has peace. Because this is what Allah wants. Even for a non-Muslim. Even for a non-Muslim. The default relation between a Muslim and a non-Muslim is not fight. Is not war. It is talking. Conversation. Introducing to you what I believe in. If you take it, you take it. If you don't take it, on the day of Qiyamah, God will judge between us. إِنَّ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَالَّذِينَ هَادُوا وَالصَّابِئِينَ وَالنَّصَارَى وَالْمَجُوسَ. Those who believe, the Jews, the Christians, the Magians, the Sabians, وَالَّذِينَ أَشْرَكُوا, and the polytheists. What? إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَفْصِلُ بَيْنَهُمْ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ. Allah will judge between them on the day of judgment. In the story. All of these different groups, those who believe in Allah, those who don't believe in Allah, Christians, Jews, those who have no religion, what happens? Can they fight because of that? No. إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَفْصِلُ بَيْنَهُمْ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ. Allah will judge between them on the day of judgment. So what do we do in this world? Everyone talks about what he believes in. And why do we believe in? وَقُلِ الْحَقُّ مِنْ رَبِّكُمْ فَمَنْ شَاءَ فَلْيُؤْمِنْ وَمَنْ شَاءَ فَلْيَكْفُرْ. Say the truth is from your Lord. Whoever wants to believe, they believe. Whoever doesn't want to believe, they don't believe. My neighbor is not a Muslim. Fine, that's fine. I talk to him about what I believe in, and I should practice what I believe in. So the Al-Hidayah Al-Amma aims at creating this peace in the world. This is the main role of divine revelation.
And demonstrate how essential, noble, and supremely lofty these principles and they transcend the barriers of time and place.
Yes, because peace is not only linked to the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It's beneficial. Fighting stereotyping is not only at the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The kuffar of Jahiliyyah, they used to stereotype the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They were saying, "ما لهذا الرسول لا يأكل الطعام ويمشي في الأسواق." How come that this prophet how come that he eats food, he walks in the markets? Why is he a prophet then? The Quran said to them, well, a prophet is a human. We never said that a prophet is an angel. So they had a stereotyping. Nowadays, there is a different type of stereotyping, but still, stereotyping is a human thing. When you see someone who disagrees with you, what's the first thing that you do? You feel intimate with your own style. You feel intimate with your own self. So you start putting others in frames.
Thus serving as evidence of the Quran's divine origin. In this manner, they are able to motivate one to accept the religion of God and follow the particular guidance. This is how general guidance prepares one to follow particular guidance.
Yeah.
Here is an example of how this influences the understanding of a Quranic text. God says, which may mean, O humans, we have created you of male and a female, and made you nations and tribes that you may know each other. The most honorable among you in the sight of God are the most God-fearing. God is knowledgeable, aware. Exegetes have concentrated on the subject of lineages and how boasting about these used to be one of the most reprehensible characteristics of pre-Islamic Arabs.
So basically, here is the ayah that we mentioned before. O people, we've created you from male and female and made you into nations and tribes so that you follow, that you get to know each other. If you take this ayah and look at the tafsir, what did the Mufassirin say about it? They discussed it in their context. Imam al-Razi and others, they discussed it in what we can call a pre-modern context. They said this ayah came down to speak to Arabs, but it continues to speak to Muslims throughout. It came down to speak to Arabs because Arabs had a problem. What is their problem? They used to focus on lineage. They used to find pride. Oh, I come from such and such tribe. Do Muslims do that nowadays? Yes. I'm Pakistani. I'm Pathan. I'm Kashmiri. No, I'm Mirpuri. No, I am this. No. Look at my skin. He's black. I am a little bit coconut. He is a bit dark. I'm not like that. Look at me. We do that. We have forgotten about Ka'b and Hudayl, these Arab tribes, but we've replaced it with what? Patan, Pashtun, this. Or in Egypt, I'm from the north, I'm from the south, I'm from the east, I'm from the west. No, do you think I'm fallah, I'm peasant? No, I'm not. I'm educated. Do you think I'm working class? No, I'm not working class. I'm upper middle class. I'm middle class. I'm super middle class. I'm an aristocrat. I'm an autocrat. I'm a theocrat. All of these crats. So we have replaced the Arab tribalism with something called nationalism. We just made the tribe a little bit bigger. And it's built on a different basis. So the ayah still addresses us to this day. In those days, the Mufassirin, they were saying, look, Arabs used to have this disease and this social disease and this social disease. Yes, very valid. So someone who reads the books of tafsir, he will say, this ayah is not relevant anymore. Khalas, alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cured the ummah from tribalism. Yes, but it's plagued with nationalism. It's plagued with sectarianism. This is Salafi, Sufi, this even in the South. This is Rifa'i, this is Shadili, this is Naqshbandi, this is that, this is this. And everyone comes with like their turban. Their turban is their what? Their stamp. I remember once I went to meet Sheikh Muhammad al-Yaqubi in Slough. You know that little small city that sticks next to Heathrow Airport, and they claim that they are a city. They're just an extension of Heathrow Airport. This is a Londoner speaker. Yeah, this is like a forgotten terminal, right, in Heathrow Airport. So in that city, I'm sitting at the back of the masjid, and I'm very particular when I go to big gathering. I sit at the very back, and I don't want to engage with anyone. So I'm sitting at the back waiting for the gathering to start, and then one uncle comes from the front. I think he was the imam of the masjid. And back in the days, I used to wear the Hadrami, the Hadrami turban, the one that was like layers, like Habib Umar's one. So he comes and says, Naqshbandi? I said, no. Shadili? I said, Qadiri? I said, no. Give it one more guess. If you give one more guess, I give you £1. He's like, what? I said, Muhammadi. SubhanAllah, this is very sick. It's very sick. After that, I decided not to wear this turban. I started like, sometimes I wear this turban and this turban and this turban. Why do I wear so many turbans? To disturb people, right? To disturb people so that you don't get what you are, right? So we start even categorizing people inside Tasawwuf. You go to this masjid, you go to that masjid. I went to Bradford. SubhanAllah, I've been to Bradford only twice or 3 times in my life, but they were so rich experiences, right? That I don't go there anymore. Any invitation from Bradford, I turn it down, like regardless. So it's a very nice city, by the way, like don't take me wrong. But there is so much fighting. It's such a small community that there is so much fighting. So you are in this masjid and there are people just across the road. They have another masjid. And there is a house right next to that masjid that they are refusing to pray with this jama'ah, so they have their own jama'ah. It's like too much. In Birmingham, I think we have like more masajid than the Muslim community who live. It's too bad. And what happens? Non-Muslims, the larger society, just look at us. And when they want to come and talk to someone in the Muslim community, everyone, and when there is funding from the local council and grants and stuff like that, I'm the one. It damages us. So this ayah continues to be relevant today. When is Maghrib, Sidi Bilal? 1 minute? Khalas, alhamdulillah, good timing. No, Sidi. Maghrib is gharib, Sidi. We better pray Maghrib. Yeah, we better pray Maghrib. Of course. Don't worry, inshallah. I'm not going to run away. If I'm late, I'll let you drive me back to Birmingham. You don't only go to Birmingham for Sheikh Sadiq. You can come with me as well. where did he stop? So the whole object of general guidance. So page 32.
The whole object of general guidance is to promote particular guidance by serving as a preliminary for it. Its goal is to invite all people to a divinely inspired system of values, divine laws, and principles of good functioning for human society, then demonstrate how essential, noble, and supremely lofty these principles and purposes are, and how they transcend the barriers of time and place, thus serving as evidence of the Quran's divine origin. In this manner, they are able to motivate one to accept the religion of God and follow the particular guidance. This is how general guidance prepares one to follow particular guidance.
So basically, now we said that there are two levels of hidayah, of demonstration. One is to do with the general guidance in which the Quran addresses all human race, and the other is to do with the particular guidance in which the Quran addresses the Muslim community who believe in its sacredness. General guidance aims at creating a safe and a peaceful and a coherent human society, introducing values, virtues, civilization, how to overcome the barriers that are inherent in human beings. Human beings normally, by their nature, they don't like those who disagree with them. So how can we overcome our attachment to our own opinions, our biases? That's a human thing. That's a human disease, and the Quran treats that human thing. When we manage to ascend above our barriers, basically, when we embrace the general guidance, it prepares us for the particular guidance. We will be in better position to receive the instructions and to appreciate the instructions Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives to the Muslim community. So nowadays, if we think about it, this is like a circle. The Quran addresses the global society and addresses a small fraction that's called the Muslim community. When it addresses the global society, it aims at preparing it to understand and to appreciate. In the world of today, Muslims face a lot of stereotyping and a lot of phobia, Islamophobia. Why is that? Because the global society is not prepared to appreciate the values of difference. So when the general guidelines of the Quran, when the general guidance of the Quran is not embraced by the larger human society, then who will be the first to suffer? Muslim community themselves. So that means we are not doing enough, not da'wah, we are not doing enough of introducing the khair that we have to humanity and tell people, listen, there is a better alternative. When the vices of sectarianism and racial discrimination manipulate the human race, the first ones who will suffer will be the Muslim community themselves. And that's because they have neglected their human duty. So when we talk today about da'wah, if I ask you, is there a lot of da'wah stands in different parts of London today? Yes, there is. And in Birmingham, on Sunday, you go to Birmingham city centre, you'll find some Muslims standing in the corner with copies of the Quran. Isn't it? You go to Hyde Park corner and you will find all of these speakers. But that is what? Even if, of course, this is not the da'wah. Of course, this is not the da'wah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not go to Christians and say, you guys are wrong. They came to him, to his masjid. He welcomed him in his masjid and he talked to them. Debating, some people think that debating is the best way. Well, the Prophet ﷺ didn't debate ever in his life. He introduced what he had when they came to him, and when they refused, he said, okay, if you are lying or I'm lying, let's call the curse of Allah upon the one who's lying, in his masjid. And he let them pray. The Nasara, the Christians of Najran, prayed in his masjid, offered their prayer in the masjid of the Prophet ﷺ. So let's assume that even that this is da'wah, even though it's not. But let's assume it is. This is da'wah to the Muslims, not da'wah to the non-Muslims. Or this is da'wah khassa, this is the particular one. So where is the amma? Where is the amma? You know who's doing the amma? The real scholars. those who would go and sit with the ulama of Christianity, the scholars of Christianity, and show them. You can do that when you're honest in your business, when you're honest in your neighborhood, when your house is clean, when in front of your house is clean, when you don't block the passageway of your neighbor. Then that's your da'wah. That's the value of respect. When you're diligent, when you're sincere, when you're respectful, when you respect the law of the land, that's your da'wah. Why? Because you show that Muslims are not barbarians, they are not uncivilized. No, they are civilized. Nowadays we live a dichotomy between Muslims who are very professional, very respectful, but they are very secular, and Muslims who are very religious, but they are very unprofessional and very problematic. The balance that a Muslim should hit is, how can you be very civilized, very modern, so to say, and at the same time very committed and very practicing Muslim. Nowadays we think for a person to be very successful in life, they have to drift away from Islam in one way or the other. They become nominal Muslims, Muslims by name only. So if we're able to practice this general guidance or spread it, it will prepare people for what? To follow the particular guidance, to appreciate it. Yeah, continue.
Here is an example of how this influences the understanding of a Quranic text. God says, "O humans, we have created you of a male and a female, and made you nations and tribes that you may know each other. The most honorable among you in the sight of God are the most God-fearing. God is knowledgeable, aware, how concentrating on the subject of lineage, and how boasting about these."
You know, I wrote on this ayah a whole paper, only on this ayah, studying the Quran from a social science perspective, looking at the Quran from a social science perspective. This Surah Al-Hujurat has 18 ayat. This ayah itself carries a solution for that clash of civilization, because the clash of civilization assumes three things: superiority of one race, and the other is that the default case is fighting, and then finally that the survival is for the fittest. Basically, the clash of civilization follows from the theory of evolution. A lot of people don't see that lineage. There is something called lineage of ideas. When there is an idea, you have to dig deep and say, where is this coming from? Where is this coming from? If you say that one race is the center of the world, one continent is the center of the world, then it will start saying this is called Middle East, this is called Far East. Far East to who? Middle East to who? Possibly someone from China might say, well, America is my Middle East, isn't it? Or my Far East. Someone from Egypt, for example, might say, Saudi Arabia is my Middle East, India is my Far East. So basically everyone, nowadays these terms, Middle East, Far East, Near East, this East, these terms have been used in language without challenging them. They are no more challenged. No one will ever talk about that. So what we need to do is, if we're intelligent Muslims, we need to look at the terms that are used and to try to transform these terms and say, no, hold on a second, I don't accept that. There is one great professor in Morocco called Professor Philosopher Taha Abdurrahman. Read a book by Wael Halaq on him called Reforming Modernity. So Taha Abdurrahman says, yes, modernity as a cultural and a civilization expression has appeared in Europe, but we do not necessarily have to take that term and take that product of Europe as it is. We can take it and contextualize it to our context. So we reform it. when Britain and France shared the Muslim world, because Britain and France shared the Muslim world. They literally divided the Muslim world between them. Yes, there was Portuguese occupation of Indonesia. Yes, Germany was somewhere in Central and South Africa. Yes, Netherlands was in South Africa. But the biggest two imperial powers in the world were what? Britain and France. In fact, France preceded Britain in that. France went first. And then Britain followed. The first one who invaded, the first most significant incident of the West clashing into the Middle East or into the East was not the Portuguese occupation of Indonesia, even though that happened in like 1950 something. No, 1590 something. It happened very, very early, right? Almost a century after Muslims were kicked out of Spain. The Portuguese and the Spanish started going around the world using the seamanship that they learned from Muslims. So Vasco da Gama went all the way around Africa to explore. Christopher Columbus went to America. But all of that was explorative. But the first expedition that went out to occupy another land and start building an empire outside Europe was which expedition? The French expedition in 1798, led by Napoleon Bonaparte. It was after the French Revolution. 17 what times it is? 1798. That year, 1798, mark that year. In all academia, this is the first clash between the East and the West. The real clash. This is when European modernity started to come to the Middle East. And the Middle East Muslim world, they started thinking, wow. This was the first time a serious contact happened between Europe and the Middle East since the Crusaders. Can you imagine that? Since the Crusaders, for centuries, Europe just was busy. Different monarchs fighting with each other, and there are new states being formulated. And then the French Revolution, which was mainly an idea revolution, a revolution of ideas, political revolution, and the Industrial Revolution, which is an economic revolution. That re-changed Europe. And then they went to the Americans, but only Napoleon Bonaparte. As soon as Napoleon Bonaparte came, and he stayed for 3 years in Egypt, from 1798 till 1801, and he was kicked out. He had to leave after 1 year, and he put a man called Kleber, General Kleber, in his place, who was assassinated by a Syrian student studying in Azhar called Sulaiman al-Halabi, Sulaiman of Aleppo. This young man, because Kleber was very against Islam, him and his soldiers, because the shuyukh of Azhar in Egypt, they fought Napoleon using Jami' al-Azhar. The Azhar mosque, they used it for revolution against the invaders. So what Kleber did, he walked into Al-Azhar mosque with his horses. And they tied their horses inside the masjid, let them poo and wee inside the masjid. So that was an offense. Sulaiman al-Halabi, who was a student from Aleppo studying in Egypt, he went out in beggar's clothes and went to Kleber as if he's asking him for some help, and he stabbed him. He killed him. They killed him on, what do you call it? Stake? Stake?
They raised him on the stake.
Yeah. And look at this. This is very, very interesting. They cut the head of Sulaiman al-Halabi and kept it in the Museum Louvre in Paris, and they returned it to Syria possibly 25 years ago. The head of this young man was in Paris for more than 300 years. And they returned it only recently. Read history, is very interesting. So Napoleon left because there was unrest in France, and he came and he fought in Waterloo. You know Waterloo, London? And after he was defeated, what happened when he was defeated? He was sent to exile. Napoleon was one of the biggest minds, military minds in Europe. So they got rid of him and they sent him to exile. To where? They exiled him in a British island. Do you know? In an island called St. Helena. You know where St. Helena is? Huh? Where? Have you heard of St. Helena? It's in the Indian Ocean, in the Atlantic Ocean. You can get it only by ship from South Africa. So you go to South Africa, you take a ship to St. Helena. That's where Napoleon spent his last few years and died there, in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. Because he was one of the great military minds in Europe, in the modern Europe. Then after Kleber was killed, they appointed a guy called Mino, and he embraced Islam. Abdullah Mino. And then the French had to leave afterwards. 1801. 6 years after, Britain sent an expedition led by a man called Fraser, General Fraser, to invade Egypt. How did they know of the Valley of Egypt? Through the French. Through the French. How through the French? When Champollion, who was a great Egyptologist, a scholar, he managed to find the Rosetta Stone, and he uncoded hieroglyphic language, and he was able to read what the pharaohs wrote on the pyramids and stuff like that. The Rosetta Stone is an old stone that was found in the city of Rosetta. In Arabic, it's Rashid, Medina Rashid, right? One of the branches of the Nile. You know, the Nile goes up into the Mediterranean. The western side is called, on top there is a city called Rosetta, Rashid, and on the other side a city called Damietta. So the two branches, there is Damietta and Rosetta. Anyway, so that's when the Middle East came into contact with Europe. And that's when Muslims at that time in Egypt, they started being dazzled by Europeans. Wow, how did they manage to defeat us? Because Muslims were fighting at that time with what? Swords. Europeans, what were they fighting with, Sidi Dhakir? Pistols. Because since the discovery of powder, gunpowder, the whole shape of the world has changed. So Europeans started fighting with what? Pistols and guns. Muslims, swords. Very primitive. And making dua, Ya khafiya al-altaf, najjina mimma nakhaf, Ya khafiya al-altaf, najjina mimma nakhaf. So it was a shock for the Muslim mind. How can these people who are, look, Muslims have been imprisoned in their own self-virtue, self-righteousness. These people are infidels. They are non-believers. How can God give them victory over us while we are raising our hands? Because you don't think. God will give support not only for those who worship Him, but for those who worship Him and work hard. Not to say that Muslims in those days, they were perfect. No, they had also problems, big social problems. Right? So that was the first contact that happened. Manipulation, stereotyping, thinking that the other is lower than us. What does Islam have to offer against that? In this ayah, three things. At-ta'aruf, wat-ta'arruf, wal-ma'rifah. Three things in one word. وَجَعَلْنَاكُمْ شُعُوبًا وَقَبَائِلْ لِتَعَارَفُوا. This word is read in qira'at in three ways. تَعَارَفُوا, تَعَرَّفُوا, لِتَعْرِفُوا. Ta'arafa means to get to know. Ta'arrafu means to know one another by intermingling. Ta'rifu means just to know, to realize. So as if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in this word, there are three levels of cultural recognition. One, individuals need to travel to other lands and get to know other people. Two, that's not enough. Let's start a massive communication. Let's get some of our people to go and study abroad, and some of your people to come and study and live with us. When they live with us, and we live with them, when we live in that other land and they live in this land, we will discover that we're just like each other. There is no problem. When you look at two houses, one is a Muslim and the other is not a Muslim, you realize that it's the same social problems. Husbands and wives still argue with each other regardless of their faith. And children still cause trouble to their parents regardless of their faith. The general social problems that are faced by the society are faced by everyone. You can't say that Muslims are socially better than anybody else nowadays. Sah? No. Muslim parents and non-Muslim parents face the same problems. Why? We discover this when we live right next to each other. When a non-Muslim comes and lives in a Muslim area, do you think that these people will have any stereotyping of their Muslim neighbors? No. Why? Been living right next to them for 20 years, 30 years, isn't it? But when we become pockets, this is the Muslim area, this is like no immigrants in this area, then stereotypes started to build. So ta'arafu, get to know one another in workplace, and then ta'arrafu, like get to know one another at a deeper level, and then ta'arifu, then you will realize, you will know that no human being is deprived of value and virtue. And subhanallah, the three ways of reading this word are in the qira'at, in the recitations the Prophet ﷺ read it. وَجَعَلْنَاكُمْ شُعُوبًا وَقَبَائِلَ لِتَعَارَفُوا لِتَعْرِفُوا. And then لِتَعْرِفُوا, what will you know? أَنَّ أَكْرَمَكُمْ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ أَتْقَاكُمْ. That the most righteous is the most honorable. So it's not to do with color, it's not an outward thing, it's an inward thing. The one who has taqwa. What does taqwa mean? Right, self-God consciousness. The one who works hard for the service of humanity, he is the one who is most honorable. So you should strive for being in service of each other, not being in destruction of each other. Continue.
They discussed what the rules of lineages were among them, and as a consequence the question of who is worthy to marry whom, and how Islam lays stress on the factor that God-fearing is more honorable than noble lineage, and so on. I have read the commentaries on this verse in a number of works such as Al-Fashat, Al-Tasheer, Mafadih al-Ghaib, Al-Muharrar
Al-Wajiz,
Al-Qurtubi, Ruh al-Bayan, and found them indeed to revolve around these meanings. However, bringing into play the question of general guidance as explained above, and remembering that the address involves the whole of mankind, brings about the following manner of understanding it. The verse being addressed to all people informs them that they have a common origin. It does this in preparation for an important purpose and noble intent which is shortly to be made clear. It informs them that they were divided into nations and tribes, dispersed all over the earth, so that each community had its own unique set of experiences and histories.
And that actually creates a space for people to run businesses. If everyone had the same geographical location, why would people go for a holiday? If it's all winter across the world, when would you go for a holiday? It is hot here, then you go to the southern side. Have you ever come across Christmas time in a hot country? Can you imagine Christmas in a hot country when it's really sunny and sweating? I had that in Argentina and in South Africa. If you go December time, it's the hottest time of the year in South Africa, southern part of the southern hemisphere. So people go abroad. If it is all green, why would people go to enjoy the desert and have a desert drive in Dubai or in Saudi Arabia or in other country, isn't it? Why would people go to have some kind of humidity? If everyone lives in cities, why would people enjoy, or how would people enjoy some kind of serene and quiet time in the countryside? If all of us were to speak English, for example, who's going to be the translator? This whole business of Google Translate and Human Translate, and this whole business of localization and program translation. Why would anyone bother building a dictionary? Do you know how long it takes people to build dictionaries? 50 years sometimes to build a dictionary. I think the first one who built an English dictionary, it took him about 50 years to do that. So imagine, why would a person build a dictionary? If people's language doesn't deteriorate, why would people who build dictionaries will run out of business? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it that way. Why would someone come to London and buy all of these, like London Big Ben and the Parliament, and take souvenirs and go around the world and collect fridge magnets? People, that's a big business, isn't it? That's a big business. That's called diversity business. This business is based on what? Diversity. The fact that people are diverse. Husbands and wives, you come from two different cultures, or two different languages, or two different backgrounds, two different modes. How would you discover, oh, the other party, subhanallah, she is kind of, oh, this person is a Leo, his wife is Aquarius, he is this, he is that. So she calms him down when he's angry. He kind of energizes her when she's relaxed. And then the children come in the middle. So if everyone is at the same level of understanding, what will be the point of the teacher repeating what he's supposed to say a couple of times, or 3 times, or 4 times, right? Go on, Sidi.
Each had its specific kinds of knowledge, sciences, arts, and crafts that over the centuries formed a particular cultural heritage. The sum of each community's experiences, the particular kinds of knowledge it was able to grasp, the sources it depended on, and its ability to use purer sources by relying on revealed knowledge made each community unique in its quality. It is obvious that the cultural heritage of the Indians differs from that of the Greeks, both differ from that of the Persians,
Yeah, I would advise, there is one beautiful lecture by one of the rabbis, Rabbi Jonathan Sachs. Would advise to have a look at it. He talks about numbers and language. How the first ones who invented an alphabet were the Jews. The ones who introduced the alphabet were the Jews. And why did they introduce the alphabet? Because they needed to put the Torah in writing. The Greeks introduced the numbers. And Greece is on the western side. Is actually if you're facing north, they are to the left of the Phoenician civilization and the original land of the Jews. And he says it's very interesting that one side of the brain, the right side of the brain, is recital, while the left side of the brain is what? Mathematical. It's very interesting. Check it out. I can't remember when did I listen to it, but it's available on YouTube. Jonathan Sachs on the introduction of the alphabet. It's very, very interesting how he links both, how the Jews have introduced the alphabet and how they preserved that. And actually he talks about how Eastern civilizations generally are recital civilizations. We can link that to the Quran. Was the Quran written first or was it recited first? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not say to his messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, "Uktub bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq." Did he say write in the name? What did he say? Read, iqra. Why? And the Quran, yes, the Quran is called what? Al-Kitab, the written. But it's called what also? Mainly Al-Quran, the recital. Why? Because Arabs belonged to the East, and the East were people of recitation. Since they were people of recitation, it was much easier for them to memorize it through the medium of reading, reciting. To this day, people don't read or write, but yet they memorize the Quran just by listening. Right? That's how the Quran was communicated. People just listen and repeat. To the level that even if you can write the Quran and read it from the Mus'haf, that's not enough to secure that you pronounce it in the right way. They have a very interesting saying. They say, لا تأخذ العلم من صحفي ولا القرآن من مصحفي. Don't take knowledge from someone who learns from the books, and don't take the Quran from a mushafi, a person who learns it from a mushaf. If he opens the mushaf and he reads, وَلَا تَقُولَنَّ لِشَيْءٍ in Surah Al-Kahf, it is لِشَيْءٍ. So what's the alif doing? That's the writing of it. But how do we pronounce it? لشيء. So what about the alif? It's alif. This ayah, subhanallah, just conclude with this, just to show you some of the vitality of the Quran. We have this word. Who can read this? Al-ulama. Isn't it? Al-ulama. It is written like that in some places in the Quran, but in some other places in the Quran it's written like this. It's the same word, by the way. Isn't it? Do you know what's the difference? It's the same word, read the same way, but read the same way in Hafs. But if we're reading other qira'at like Hamza, this is written different. This is read differently. So Hamza al-Kufi, one of the 7 Qurra, has madhab in the Hamza. His name is Hamza, and his concern is with what? The Hamza. So the Hamza that is at the end, here, these Qur'an are not invented. This is how the Prophet ﷺ read it. So Arabs, because it comes from the Arabs, this Hamza at the end, Arabs always had a problem with the Hamza. So you say al-ulama. Hamza would read this, if he's stopping there, as turning this into another alif and removing it. So it will be what? Al-ulama. Or turning it into an alif and keeping it al-ulama. No Hamza. Or turning it into an alif and keeping it and adding an alif in the middle. Al-ulama. 6 harakat. It's the same. It might not make any difference to you unless you know. Al-ulama, al-ulama, al-ulama. This one. There are other ways of stopping in this. Something called al-ishmam. Al-ulama, al-ulama, al-ulama. I'm just moving my lips. There is something called rawm. Rawm is to bring the dhamma very short, very softly. And with the dhamma, you are only allowed 2 or 4. You can't do the 6. Al-ulama, al-ulama. How many ways have I shown here? 3 with full sukoon, 3 with ishmam, and 2 with rawm. 8. What about this one? We have the same 8. Al-ulama, al-ulama, al-ulama. 3. 3 with ishmam. Al-ulama, al-ulama, al-ulama. And I have 2 with rawm. Al-ulama, al-ulama. And I have 3 with full wow, because this is a wow. Al-ulama, al-ulama, al-ulama. So another 3. So how many do we have here? Same goes for shuraka. Shuraka. Look at that in the Quran. It's written like that. So how a word is written affects how it is read. Take the Mus'haf. Learn from the Mus'haf. How would you see these 11 in the Mus'haf? Huh? When we read in the Quran, وَلَا تَحِينَ مَنَاص. Someone might read it as وَلَا تَحِينَ مَنَاص. Right? And la, Allah. This is read as what? Allah, Allah. In reading, it's the same. But where are they? Allah is originally what? An and la. But it's merged. Where in the Quran is it written separately, and where in the Quran it's written merged? It's not puzzle. We know the places. فَقْطَعْ بِعَشْرِ كَلِمَاتٍ اللَّهِ. In 10 places, write them separately. فَقْطَعْ بِعَشْرِ كَلِمَاتٍ اللَّهِ. اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد. تدخل ولا إله إلا من الله سبحانه وتعالى بعشر كلمات ألا مع ملجأ. Yes. ألا ملجأ من الله إلا إليه. Like this. لا إله إلا ألا إله إلا هو. وتعبد ياسين. ثاني هود لا يشركن يشرك تدخلن يعلو على ألا يقول لا أقول إما بالرعد والمفتوح أصل وعما نقطع مما بروم والنساء خلف المنافقين أمن أسس. The ulama of writing the Quran, they know exactly, they put in poetry whereabouts in the Quran it is an and la, and whereabouts in the Quran it is Allah. So if you know the places where it is disconnected, then you know that the rest is connected. If you know an, ma, and ما and أما عن ما and عما. You know all of this. The verse of the Quran. Which one is the of the Quran? Which one is God of the Quran? So this shows us that the preservation of the Quran, the preservation of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's heritage was so particular that you can't just take it from the books. And that's why the Quran was revealed in what? In recitation before it was written down. So when they continuously kept it in their minds and their tongues, they were able to go back to the book to confirm it. But not the other way around. والله تعالى أعلى وأعلم وأعز وأكرم صلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه وسلم والحمد لله رب العالمين. الله.